Welcome to the How to Adult podcast, where we learn all things adulting. My name is Travis Walker, and I will be your host. Today's topic is all about how to balance the role of being a young dad and also being a young professional. So buckle up because we're about to learn how to adult together.
We are back for another episode of the How to Adult podcast, and we've got a familiar face, Kobe Knox. He was on episode 15. He is back to talk about a very important topic, which is how do we balance this this time in our life of being young dads, but also trying to get our careers started. So, Kobe, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me on. I had so much fun last time. I had to come do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first, I want to know a little bit about what your family looks like. When you hear family, what does that mean to you?
Um, well, I don't know. I think family starts to take on a new meaning whenever you have your own kids. Like, family means one thing whenever you are the child of someone else, but when you have your own children, it starts to look a little bit different. So, I'm not saying that, your immediate family isn't just as important as, your kids and your wife, but once you start your own family unit, it's a different ballgame.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So do you have wife and kids? What does your family unit look like?
Yeah, so I'm coming up on being married for 3 years, and we've got a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Can you tell me something cool? Tell me something that you love about each of your kids.
Um, Margaret is a super talented artist. She is so good at making things, just anything. Like she's
Yeah,
been making, she makes a lot of clay figures and stuff, and she's really
that's awesome.
talented. Like, she's really talented with drawing and stuff, and we like to do that together. So that's one thing that I love about her. I love watching her get to kind of like grow into that. And then Eleanor, my youngest one, she's just my lazy baby, dude. She's so lazy, and I love it. She just likes to sit on you, and she just wants to watch TV and hang out, and she's just always so surprised by everything. She just oh oh all the time. I love her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you've also got an incredible wife. I've known both of you for several years. But can you tell me something that you love about Taylor?
Taylor is exceptionally good at taking care of people. I think that she has maybe made me a lot more thoughtful. I think I'm the logical and she's the emotional. She has a lot more emotional competence than I do. So that's one thing that I would say.
Yeah, yeah. We hold very similar positions in our households. That's awesome. So, can you tell me about a time where you felt proud as a dad because of something that you did?
Oh, that's kind of tough. Hmm.
Or maybe just a time you felt proud as a dad in general.
Oh, here. Okay, this is a nice. I like that. Like my work and my parenting can kind of like coincide. But one thing that I did feel proud about is like for Margaret's class parties and stuff. A lot of times I will like you know kind of siphon off a little bit of card stock from the office, and I will like design graphics and like print and cut like custom like cards and stuff for her class. So like one time I made coloring pages, like custom coloring pages for all the kids in her class. It kind of makes me feel like the cool dad, because not everybody can do that. They all had their like individual names on it, and it was custom. I can't remember what the theme was, maybe Thanksgiving or something
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, I love doing stuff like that. making like little print material stuff, like designing things for them. So yeah, it makes me feel like the cool dad a little bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you just kind of alluded to some of the skills that you have in your work and just in general. So can you talk about for a few minutes kind of your professional journey, maybe over the last 2 3 years? I know you've had a few jumps. So what do you do now, and kind of what led up to this point?
Yeah, so right now I am the marketing lead for I guess you would say energy and industrial equipment manufacturer. So I manage the parent company owns a handful of companies, and I'm responsible for managing the marketing of 6 or 7 of those companies. I'd have to count on my fingers how many, but yeah. So basically, I
Yeah,
manage the print and digital marketing for a multi-billion-dollar industrial company. Yep.
that's incredible. That's incredible. So what led you to this role?
Um, well, what it comes down to is I think that aside from my degree and I mean my experience obviously helps, but aside from my degree, I guess I would say that I have a really functional skill set. So, and it's not stuff that they teach you in school unless you go like double major or like triple major or something. Um, so I taught myself a lot how to do a lot of different stuff, and so I have the bachelor's in marketing, which helps. Obviously, you need a college degree to have some level of credibility, but it's mainly my video, photo, graphic design skills that make me functional in the role, and it makes me different than a lot of other candidates. So my three years, I think, of working as essentially a staff videographer and video editor for Beaumont Independent School District. That's where I kind of like honed most of these skills. Like, I mean, I've been doing it for years, but that's when I got really good. And so being
Yeah,
able to come in with that particular skill set in an environment where it's a business to business marketing scenario, and it's not like we don't rely on like trendy marketing and sleek marketing to sell the product. I mean, people need the product regardless. But in that way, I think the marketing kind of got neglected in a way. It wasn't as up to date as it needed to be, and so it kind of made me a clear choice for the role because I have all of these functional skills they'd never had before. So that that's where I think it's kind of nice, like being in a not smaller, but smaller compared to like a big metropolitan area like Houston. Being in a
right.
smaller area, there's less people like me. There's a lot of people like
Hmm.
me in larger areas, but I was able to find kind of a niche, in my hometown versus moving to a larger city. And you still get to take advantage of the low cost of living and and do what you love to do. So
Yeah, yeah, you're already starting to show kind of the different things dads that we have to consider, and with your comment about cost of living, and we became dads at what now is considered a young age, and so how has having a family at a younger age impacted your journey as a young professional as you're trying to start your career? How have those two things happening at the same time impacted your journey?
it makes you hungry. I mean,
In what way?
I mean, I think, maybe as a young dad, especially in my case, like we weren't planning to start so early. And it's like whenever that paternal instinct kind of like kicks in, it's like, I mean, you can't really turn off the drive to take care of your blood. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't
Right.
really turn it off, and it kind of it propels you for, or at least in my case, I mean, it has propelled me forward extremely fast. Um, just because it's not for personal gain. I'm doing it out of, you know, I wouldn't say necessity, but out of a desire to provide the best possible kind of life and upbringing for my kids and, my family, as a whole. And yeah, that's what I would say, it makes you hunger, it gives you something to get up for versus, you know, I don't know, personal gain. Which it is. I mean,
Right.
I mean, you do gain something from it, but, it's not what drives you by any means.
Right, right. It makes you hungry, and that is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to continue forward in progressing your career, and you want to progress your career for yourself, but you also want to progress your career to provide. And so that I can definitely relate to that. And have you experienced any challenges throughout your journey of again trying to start this career at the same time as raising a young family? Any challenges that came out of that?
Yeah, have you seen the cost of groceries recently? Eh, the last
I
2
have.
years the last 2 years have, been I think people our age that are on a normal, like progressing at a normal pace, as far as like where they are in their career and, I don't whether they're married, not married, looking to have kids, whatever. It's like if you're a normal 26-year-old in America, you're already having a hard time. Try having 2 kids or 3
Right.
kids. And it's particularly hard for young people in, this day and age. Just a byproduct of the pandemic and, global conflict and stuff like that. It's just kind of like a perfect storm of messed up, um, scenarios to, it makes things difficult, especially to succeed, in a, a smaller economy like Beaumont, you know, it's, um, it's hard to make a living. I'll put it at that, man. It's hard to make a living these days.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally hear you, man. And with that challenge, how have you taken that and risen to the occasion? How have you made sure that you can provide for your family?
I think that, I think that, in my professional life, I think that I push a lot harder than people are used to from someone my age, maybe. And you can take
Right,
that one of two ways. I mean, you can look down on it as, somebody who's like young, naive, trying to work up the ladder, blah, 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 trying to, you know, get a leg up. Or you could see it, from a more like practical perspective, which is this is kind of what you have to do if you want to carve out a path for yourself, living intentionally, like saying, not just like thinking about the things that you want to do and achieve, but saying, I will do that. Like, and being and believing yourself, like not just affirming yourself, but like believing it, you know? And I think I do that a lot. I don't,
yeah,
I don't talk about things I want to do. I talk about things that I'm going to do.
I love that. I love that. What formed that mindset? Where did that mindset come from?
Mm, you know, I feel like
Necessity.
I feel like it's a mixture of the way I was brought up, like my dad, I feel like, he's it's partially that. I think, and as I had my own kids and started to think more about the qualities of my dad and the stuff that was handed down to me, I think it started to maybe like manifest itself more like in my life. But my dad's just a very how would I how would I put it? He is very much about doing what you say you're going to do. Um and I think he would call that showing up. Life is all about showing up.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily about it, the quality of the work you do and the effort that you put in matters, but first and foremost you have to show up, you have to deliver, you have to make good on your promises. And I think just like a lot of um practical mindsets like that. And then combine that with the motivation of I got mouths to feed. It kind of it motivates you to, like I said, carve out a path for yourself. you i'm I'm making room, dude. Like, move over, you gotta make room for
Yeah,
me, because I'm not gonna ask. I'm gonna you know I'm gonna insert myself into the mix.
yeah, yeah. I love the mindset there. That's really good. That's really good. So, kind of shifting gears for a moment. I know that you have your own business and you've grown pretty quickly within your W-2 roles, if you will. So, how do you balance your own career aspirations with all of the things that we're talking about? You still have mouths to feed, but you still have aspirations. You still have goals, and you still want to move toward those goals. How do you balance that the thought process?
I think that it's about this sounds a little bit like a little too on the nose, but it's about prioritization. And I don't mean that like, I almost mean it from like a managerial like standpoint. Like, you have to be able to compartmentalize and devote time to the stuff that is most valuable in your life, just like you would in a job role. And you know it's really about like sitting down and assigning value to the things in your life. How much do I value this and this and this? And you have to constantly like kind of reaffirm that, and you have to stop yourself whenever you're devoting too much time to you're devoting too much time to one area and you're neglecting others, because that's where the problem lies. And you just have to you have to be cognizant of it at all times. Like, you just constantly have to kind of consider, like, okay, I've got X, Y, and Z done. Right now it's really important to me that I turn this all off, put this down, and watch a movie with my kid, or take my kids on a walk,
Hmm.
or you know go out and play in the backyard. And yeah, you have to know when to put stuff down. And that's kind of, nobody can really like, there's not a good like how to for that. It's just kind of experiential. I feel like you have to learn by doing it and continue to practice, and then looking at where you've made mistakes and trying to get better every day.
Right. Right. It's a tough journey learning how to prioritize that time, right? Because you want to do so many things, but you've almost got to get burned to to learn and move forward and be better each day, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great message. Um, and so, as young professionals, specifically, definitely feel like in the workplace there is an additional amount of I'll call it pressure, in the sense of we're young professionals. There's a certain connotation about our generation and how we work and our work ethic. And so, maybe just kind of get your thoughts on, do you think that pressure exists in terms of being young professionals in the workplace?
Yeah, totally. And I've experienced a lot of it. And I think a lot of a lot of what it is when you wh- when you break it down to like its core, it's really, I think it's just like distrust. It comes down to distrust. And I think the older this is true for every time period, but the older generation is distrustful of the newer generation. Whether
Hmm.
that be their, what they like, what they don't like, what they assign value to versus what you assign value to. you know I think it's just comes down to being distrustful, and I think the solution to that is you have to build the trust, because I think that's really like the core problem. You have to show people that you're trustworthy and that you um are accountable. And I think also too, it puts on some weird pressure to maybe appear differently. It's like, okay, like if you can't trust me based on working with me, it's like you almost want to try to assimilate into like that older crowd. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
you feel like this desire to kind of assimilate. And sometimes that can be kind of hard, whenever you're at like the tail end of like your youth. And maybe you're still trying to hold on to like some of that, like some of those bits of your personality that are, youthful. And um and that can be kind of difficult whenever you feel like it's kind of getting stomped out, by other parts of your life that are like, you know just just have things that have to do with getting older. And
Right.
so, yeah, I think it's important to try to. That's something that I try to do. I think is maintain a level of like I try to like maintain a level of like transparency about like just who I am and what I like. I'm not gonna pretend to be something different just because it may not jive with the expectations of an older crowd. And one thing that I've been dealing with for a long time, and I feel like it's almost like a mission of mine, is like the social stigma
Yeah.
around tattoos at the workplace. I'm heavily tattooed, and I
Yeah.
and I'm not. I use my best judgment, but I'm not gonna make an effort to cover myself and like try to hide, a big part of my personality. I'm just not gonna do it. And
Right.
and you have to be smart and use your best judgment. Obviously, there's instances where you have to, you have to have a little bit of tact and stuff, but like, if I'm going to like a big business meeting, I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt. I'm wearing buttons.
Sure.
But it's stuff like that. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna, front about the kind of music I like or the clothes I like to wear or what I do in my free time and stuff like that. There's a lot of things about me that like just I'm sure make no sense to my coworkers. Like I love heavy metal and I love hip hop and I go to, shows and I, you know, I'm really into like fashion and stuff and I'm not gonna pretend to be like some, you know, middle-aged dad when I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's totally fair. Right. I'm definitely with you. I think that there's definitely stigma or pressure, whatever the word is, in the workplace for the young professionals out there. And I think there's also a good amount of pressure. Maybe I would push to say that there maybe is more pressure on young dads now, more so in the past. I think that there are heightened expectations, rightfully so. Um, and I think that there is an additional pressure in the family. Is that what you've experienced as well? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I would say I think that and tell me, I mean, yeah, I'm sure, you're in the podcast world. I'm sure you listen to stuff, you probably listen to a lot of the same stuff that I do. But like just in the media and, like the podcast world and, a lot of media in general, I feel like there's been like almost as a response to, the I guess is it the third wave of like, like the feminist movement, like the early 2000s, 2010s and stuff like that. Almost in a response, there's been this kind of like heightened sense of I think like a lot of men have started to appreciate more what it means to, be a man in today's world. Like, and what
Hmm.
masculinity is and what the role of like a patriarch is and stuff like that. It's like there's a lot of I think I would say there's a lot of like I think a lot of guys our age that kind of they yearn for a lot of the same stereotypical things that they say a man should, which is like um you know, being a leader and achieving things and, providing and, things like this, like real, very stereotypical like tropes of like being a man. It's like I think a lot of that was maybe lost on our generation and not like bestowed, in the same way that it was to other generations. And I think a lot of guys
Hmm.
are like trying to fill that void, 'Cause, I mean, like,
Hmm.
you go back to, like, 1950s, 60s, 70s, it's like, you know, your dad showed you what it meant to be a man and a leader and and a provider and stuff. And then I feel like, there was less emphasis on it moving forward because we're doing a lot of, taking a hard look in the mirror and looking at how we treat women in our country for a long time,
Hmm.
rightfully so. And I think in the mix of that, some of those values, like I think kind of got lost on young men
Hmm.
at least. And which is, I'm not saying that, you know, we didn't, we didn't need to take a hard, long look at, the role of men and women in our country because, women have faced a lot of, unfair treatment in the last, but I don't know, since the beginning of forever, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what there to say. Unfair treatment, and I think,
Sure.
while we were kind of examining that and learning, how to better ourselves, I don't know, I just think the same w people didn't apply the same value to teaching young men that kinda stuff, and a lot of people
Hmm.
are, like, ready to learn it, you know? Am I making sense? I feel
Yeah.
like I'm rambling. I'm
Yeah.
trying really hard to, like, put these thoughts together.
You're doing great. You're doing great because I do think that there's a shift happening for whatever reason uh, that you theorized in that response. I do think there's a shift happening. I think
It's a
that
lot of motivational
young men.
speaking, do you know what I mean? A lot of motivational speaking and a lot of,
Mhm,
there's a lot of, like, public figures that, are just kind of, um, it's a lot about self-improvement and young men are just, like, gravitating towards this stuff like crazy because I think they wanna learn it, and it's just, like, blown up in the last couple of years.
yeah, yeah, and I think that in that shift of what young men think what it is to be a man, I think that how young men are stepping in as fathers is different as well. I see more involvement, more activity, more wanting to be a part of the not only the raising kid process, but also the nurturing of the kid process. And I think that that's something that I've noticed that I think is really interesting, that I'm seeing more in dads like us and dads that are our age around us. Are you seeing the same thing?
I think that is a one of the really positive byproducts of, like I said, kind of in the last, like 20 years, us as Americans kind of analyzing the relationship between men and women. I think that's one thing that we kind of figured out along the way is that, I don't, men were taught a lot of important things, for the last 100 years, but for whatever reason, the, you know, how to be a present, loving, involved father was like maybe not emphasized enough. I don't know, but I mean, I think that's like something that we've come to find out. Like, hey, this is equally my responsibility, and I think we've kind of, like I said, looked at ourselves in the mirror, and that's something positive that's come out of it. Is being a man isn't just about providing; it's also about nurturing.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good, man. That's really good. And so we've had a really great conversation about how family and building a career at the same time can be challenging, but also have a lot of opportunities within it. What's that final piece of advice out there for someone out there that is raising a young child like we are, or children like we are? And also trying to start a career, start a business, succeed in life. What's that final piece of advice from you?
Hmm. I'm gonna think about this one for a second.
Perfect.
Well, okay, maybe I'll break it up into two parts. Maybe I'll kind of answer those questions individually. Being advice for a father and advice for a professional. And this is something that I've thought about a lot in the last, in the last couple of years. And you hear a lot that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to be the hardest working person in the room. But I would like to challenge you to maybe try to be both. And
Okay.
that sounds like maybe a little bit obnoxious, but I'm not saying you have to achieve it. But I'm saying, if you want to achieve real results, try. Try not only be the hardest working person in the room, but also, try to be the smartest, try to be the most prepared, the most organized. I mean, I think there's not enough, it is not stressed on the youth enough, you know, w- how much effort is worth.
Right.
And it's like, i- it's not just about, yeah, it's about putting forth effort, and waking up every day and just reaffirming that, today I'm going to give it, my 100%. And just try to achieve those two things. If you could be the hardest working and maybe even one of the smartest, you're going to go so far. And
Right.
it just comes back to work ethic. You have to, it's not something, it can be taught, but it helps to learn it in practice. Just show up every day and try hard. Um, and then,
Good.
and then as a dad, I think that, that maybe still applies. It doesn't, not being the smartest. You don't want to be the smartest here. I mean, your kids think you're the smartest, but
Yeah.
don't be an asshole about it. Um, but yeah, just show up every day for your kids, and you'll find times where you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, I kind of fell off. Like I wasn't as present as I wanted to be today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do something different, and make good on that. Promise that to yourself. Tomorrow I'm going to do something different. Recognize the behavior
Yeah.
and change it.
That's really good. That's really good advice. Recognize the behavior and change it. Really good stuff. Well, thank you, Colby. I appreciate your time today. And thank you to all the listeners out there. And we are going to continue to learn how to adult together.
Thank you so much to Colby for coming on the show and helping us all learn how to adult. To stay up to date on all things How to Adult, make sure that you follow at How to Adult TW on Instagram and Facebook. And remember, y'all, we are going to learn how to adult together. See you next time.